So, Mr. Donald Trump has not been reelected, and he doesn't stand much of a chance of getting any of those victories in different states overturned. But, the U.S. probably has a really tough haul ahead. And I would say that because many of the things that Donald Trump has done, probably are going to haunt the U.S. for quite a while. And let me go through the list. For one thing, immigration. The U.S., it's increased the births. The births that increase the population come from immigrants. And Donald Trump has greatly reduced the number of immigrants, illegal or otherwise, going into the U.S. So the U.S. is likely to experience a kind of a hitch in its population growth. I don't know how large that is going to be. It remains to be seen. But if the U.S. were to stop having people immigrate to there, the population would start going down, like in many European countries. And unfortunately, as you can see in many European countries, that means that GDP growth slows down. I have to check, but I think that Germany has one of the highest GDP growth in Europe. And I think that might be because of how many people Germany let in. After Germany had that hard line and a whole bunch of people started coming in, I think because of the high number of people that Germany let in, even though they were trying to push a lot of people, send them back to their home countries. I think that powered the German economy. It certainly powered the UK economy, because the UK was one of the favored destinations of people, even now. So there's that. The next problem for the US is that there are so many coronavirus right now is spreading rampantly all across the US right now. And I'm pretty sure that that's going to have some long-term effects in the future. For one thing, life expectancy of people definitely is going to be going down because you have a lot of elderly people who are dying. Number two, there are people who take care of these elderly people. The people that provide their food. It's going to have an impact on the economy. That these people, it's not like it's a whole lot of people, but the elderly as far as I can think of, need a lot of medical care. They need a lot of just support care. So from that point of view, more than a child, more than anybody else. So even though it hasn't reached like 1 million deaths as yet, that is going to have some kind of an impact on the economy, the loss of those jobs, as well as the fact that, a lot of people potentially may have long-term issues because of being infected with the virus, as well as the fact that as more of these different states are open and more people catch the virus, it's by the time the vaccine comes in and is distributed to people, the US will really have been touched more than any country on the planet. Potentially, a lot of poorer countries would have been taken back. But, it makes you wonder, will that also affect the immigration as Mr. Biden comes in and maybe tries to reverse some of these things? Maybe there might be fewer people who are looking to migrate from these countries as a result of the deaths that occur. So it remains to be seen how that will pan out. Of course, the tax cuts that Trump managed to push through definitely did not help the debt that the US has. And the fact, I mean, right now, China is supposed to be back to normal. That's what a lot of Chinese YouTubers are saying. So its economy is in many ways back to normal. The US and Europe, with these rapid coronavirus cases, the US has just, in many of these states, they've just decided to, okay, we're not going to be able to get rid of corona, so let's just ramp the economy up and see what happens. So as of right now, I mean, people in Asia are in many ways back to normal. Whether that might be Taiwan, whether that might be China, whether it might be, to an extent, Korea, those places are kind of back to normal. And the US and Europe could have been as well. From one perspective, we can say kind of thank you to the US and Europe for showing the entire world that the coronavirus really was something. You know, if everybody had done a good job, people would be questioning, did something serious really happen? Is this something that really would have affected the healthcare system? So, I mean, for right now, the US and Europe is a case of they being a cautionary tale, that even though you're wealthy and even though you're supposed to have, you know, some of the smartest people in the world in your country, yeah, you probably need to prepare. And it's in a way a good thing for everybody who's alive now to remember that and to see that, so that, you know, this whole kind of pandemic, at least maybe we can wait for 100 years before there's nobody alive who remembers it. I mean, there's some people, I remember there's one person who was saying that he remembered stories from his grandparents, what his grandfather was telling him about the pandemic in 19? And I guess maybe that's the reason why in some of these places with elderly population, they've taken the precautions, because there are people who don't remember directly, but they have people that they were related to who did remember. But again, back to the US, when this thing spreads and all the way, and we see where we end up by January, you know, it's something that somebody told me. It's not about the number of deaths. It's about whether or not the healthcare system and the doctors are driven to a breaking point where they can't have, people come in for those, cosmetic surgeries and whatever else, non-essential surgeries that actually fund hospitals. That's how hospitals are able to survive. And when people can't come in because you have this large number of corona cases that are completely choking up the system, how do the hospitals survive after this? How do they get through this situation? So if people think that the healthcare system in the US is perhaps not worth what they pay for, because the US puts in a lot more money than most other developed countries, for example, and gets a lot less out of it in terms of life expectancy and the health of people who leave the hospitals. So I would say between immigration, between the widespread rate of coronavirus infections, the tax cuts that have left the federal government without as much money as it would have had, and increases the national debt in the US, with the fact that these corona stimulus things that again have increased the national debt, because unlike China and places in Asia, the economy can't open without a problem from coronavirus. With all of these people who are dying, that reduces the number of people in the society, which reduces the GDP and the jobs and all this other stuff. It just seems like the US really hit a major speed bump that is going to take a while to get over. it might just be a question of, because I was looking at the population, they were saying that, oh, Biden has had a record number of votes, and they're not saying it as much, but Trump has also had a record number of votes. No, people have not. Yeah, I think Obama was the biggest number of votes. They said 69 million something. Trump got more than that. Biden got more than that. But you know what? They are about 26 million more people in America. It's like the population is increased by about 10% from 2008 to 2020. Someone might say that, okay, let's say because of Trump, there's 4 million less people in the US as a result of that. 4 million less people is like a percentage point or so in terms of GDP. And, well, if we directly correlate it, the US has a population of about 300 million. 1% of that is about 3 million people. But a drop in GDP of 1% is like, normally it's a huge thing. It's a big deal. So for example, if you have a 1% year-over-year growth in GDP, not that great. If you have a 2%, that's a little bit better. 3%, that's great. So the difference between great and not that great, and even a recession, is just 1.5%, 2% in terms of GDP growth. If Trump has reduced the potential increase in the US population by 1-2%, that can be the difference between a recession and okay in terms of the economy. There's a lot to undo, and in some ways, in terms of the way that people see the US's standing in the world. I mean, in many ways, Bush, the last Bush, was worse than Trump. In many ways, Obama, I don't want to say in many ways, but in some ways, Obama did things that weren't that cool. Bush initiated the war as in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in, I don't know where else, and with these drones, and kind of reduced America's standing in the world. And Trump, with his threats and tariffs on allies and China, and just his whole handling and attitude, and the number of people who still were so much in favor of Trump, I'm sure that the rest of the world, it's shaken the rest of the world's foundation, its belief in the US. So I really don't know. This overall, things are not good for the US, and I don't think it's possible to get back to the point where things were, especially with Biden. So I guess we'll see how things turn out.